Hello, welcome to High Literature, a program where I introduce books and comics and art and stories and all that good stuff to you, the viewer. I originally intended to do a video for this book, Galapagos by Kurt Vonnegut, back in January. It is now the 26th of May, and yeah, I just figured now or never. Golly. So I first read this book when I was a freshman in high school, and I just found it very funny. In the same way that I found Idiocracy funny the first time I saw that. And yeah, both this book and that movie, they're not funny anymore. No. And yeah, January, that was a hard month where a lot of heinous, nightmarish news came out about a lot of heinous, nightmarish things that are still going on, have been going on. And reading this book, rereading this book at the same time did not help me feel better about things. And I will say it's interesting, you know, how your perspective changes over time and how things impact you, how things resonate with you when you reread them or rewatch them or re-listen. And oh my God, this book, it's just, So one of the things I'll start with talking about how the way it's written, it's really, really cool. I remember reading about how, like, Hunter S. Thompson had this writing practice. He was a big fan of F. Scott Fitzgerald, and he would do this thing where he would, like, copy his stories to, like, learn the cadence and the music of his writing. And if I were to ever do something like that, I would do that with Vonnegut's stuff. He has, like the 8 commandments of writing, if I remember correctly, and one of the commandments are to heck with suspense, give as much information as possible as soon as possible. And this was the first Vonnegut book I ever read, and I was just knocked over by how he wrote. He manages to tell the beginning, the middle, and the end of the story all at the same time throughout the entirety of the story. It's crazy. I don't know how he does it, but he does it. And he does that with a lot of his books. And he does this funny thing in this particular story. I can't remember if he does it in his other books. It's been a while since I've reread much Vonnegut. But anytime somebody's about to die, he puts an asterisk by their name. So there are just no spoilers in this story at all. And it's not about the end of the world. It's the end of civilization. And I guess human beings as we know them. So the way things work in this world, when you die, you have 2 choices. You can either go through the tunnel into the afterlife, or you can remain on Earth as a ghost for 1 million years before you get another opportunity to go to the afterlife. And the narrator of the story is a ghost. There is this cruise ship being built for the nature cruise of the century that is going to take the travelers on a cruise through the Galapagos Islands. And he is killed during the construction of this boat. He's one of the shipbuilders. He's decapitated, and he ends up remaining for 1 million years. And he's thinking he's going to see like the next million years of like what happens with human history and civilization. No, he gets to witness the beginning of the end through a series of events of just stupidity and hubris, and it's crazy. This story takes, let's see here, it was written in 1985, and the story itself takes place in the 80s. And the opening quote is, "In spite of everything, I still believe people are really good at heart." Anne Frank, 1929, 1944. And as I was rereading this book, I noticed, like, for me, there were like particular trains of thought that stood out for me. And I put these little like sticky tabs to mark them, and I was gonna break them down into sections. And interestingly enough, sharing the story in that way just doesn't work. So I'm just going to start from the beginning and just work my way through. The first little tab I made, he's talking about people's brains and how they're just the source of all our problems. There was no end to the evil schemes that a thought machine that oversized could imagine or execute. So I raised this question, although there is nobody around to answer it. Can it be doubted that 3-kilogram brains were once nearly fatal defects in the evolution of the human race? A second query, what source was there back then for the evils we were seeing or hearing about simply everywhere? What was the source, except for our over-elaborate nervous circuitry? My answer, there was no other source. This was a very innocent planet, except for those great big brains. In other words, Earth was great. And people just gum it all up. And then this next tab I have, it goes on talking about our great big brains. And he's specifically talking about Darwin and the Galapagos Islands. Because at one point in time, the islands were just considered, like, nobody cared about them. They were on nobody's radar. And then Darwin came along. If Charles Darwin had not declared the Galapagos Islands marvelously instructive, Guayaquil would have been just so. Yeah, it just nobody cared about these islands. But then Darwin was like, no, these islands are magnificent. Darwin did not change the islands, but only people's opinion of them. That was how important mere opinions used to be back in the era of great big brains. Mere opinions, in fact, were as likely to govern people's actions as hard evidence, and were subject to sudden reversals as hard evidence could never be. So the Galapagos Islands could be hell in one moment and heaven in the next, and Julius Caesar could be a statesman in one moment and a butcher in the next. And Ecuadorian paper money could be traded for food, shelter, and clothing in one moment and line the bottom of a birdcage in the next. And the universe could be created by God Almighty in one moment and by a big bang explosion in the next, and on and on. Thanks to their decreased brain power, people aren't diverted from the main business of life by the hobgoblin of opinions anymore. Because you see, what ends up happening is this tiny little handful of people, they end up getting shipwrecked on the Galapagos Islands. And they're thinking, we'll be rescued. Ships come through here all the time. Well, they never get rescued because the things like just the things that happen, all connected with them getting shipwrecked, results in the end of humanity. And over the course of 1,000,000 years, these people who are stranded on this island, they evolve into these creatures. And then this goes on talking about opinions, specifically money. Talking about all these countries that are going bankrupt. Whole nations were suddenly in the same situation as the San Mateo, unable to buy with their paper money and coins, or their written promises to pay later, even the barest essentials. Persons with anything life-sustaining to sell, fellow citizens as well as foreigners, were refusing to exchange their goods for money. They were suddenly saying to people with nothing but paper representation of wealth, "Wake up, you idiots. Whatever made you think paper was so valuable?" As in money. And then it goes on to talk about how, so at this point in time, there was still plenty of food and fuel and so on for all the human beings on the planet, as numerous as they had become, but millions upon millions of them were starving to death. The healthiest of them could go without food for about 40 days, and then death would come. And it was all in people's heads. People had simply changed their opinions of paper wealth, but for all practical purposes, the planet may as well have been knocked out of orbit by a meteor the size of Luxembourg. Meaning that, it's what we're dealing with right now. How many people are starving to death right now? But because of society's opinion of money and its representation of what it's worth, people are starving. And it's the product of our oversized brains making all this happen. And it's just absolutely crazy. And now, so this tab that I have, it's talking about technology and how this corporation who created this device that we'll get to in a minute, when the Matsumoto Corporation got through installing computers and robots, only 12 human beings would be able to run everything. So people young enough to have children, or at least ambitious dreams for the future, left the town in droves. It was, as Mary Hepburn would say on her 81st birthday, 2 weeks before a great white shark ate her, as though the Pied Piper had passed through town. Suddenly there were almost no children to educate, and the city was bankrupt for want of taxpayers, and the high school graduated its last class that June. Technology came, replaced everybody with computers and robots, and society just dissipated. This was written in 1985. And now we're getting to this device. It's this little handheld device. Can do lots of things. And the creator of this device his wife is a teacher So the creator of this device, his name is Zenji Hiraguchi, and his wife, Hisako, teaches the art of ikebana, which is Japanese flower arranging. And let's see here. Did I lose it? Where did it go? Oh dear. There we are. Sorry. So, it's basically today's modern internet, you know? And this thing is called mandarax. Zenji Hiraguchi had not himself taught mandarax, ikebana, or anything else it knew. He had left that to underlings. The underling who taught mandarax, ikebana, had simply taken a tape recorder to Hisako's famous ikebana class and then boiled things down. And Hisako has to say of this when she finds out that her husband took her knowledge of this art that she's a master of and dedicated her life to and had it boiled down for this handheld device. She says, "You think that everybody but yourself is just taking up space on this planet. And we make too much noise and waste valuable natural resources and have too many children and leave garbage around. So it would be a much nicer place if the few stupid services we are able to perform for the likes of you were taken over by machinery. That wonderful mandarax you're scratching your ear with now, what is that but an excuse for a mean-spirited egomaniac never to pay or even thank any human being with a knowledge of languages or mathematics or history or medicine or ikebana or anything." I mean, it just takes my breath away, honestly. Because, my God. I mean, it just hits the nail right on the head. It used to be funny, and it's not funny anymore. It's not funny anymore. And honestly, it just goes on like this. It's a fascinating book. It's a great book. It's an amazing book. And even though it's not a funny book and it's a bit of a downer, I still encourage you to read it. And I say that because, so when I read this back in January, it was hard. And coupled with just all the news that was coming out, I tried to do, a lot of self-soothing with, reading different things, watching different things, listening to different things. And it was really hard because so much I just saw differently. For instance, oh my God, like I tried to read the X-Men comic Inferno, I had a fit. It was just so the things happening in that comic where it was just, I can't even, I can't. And it happened like that with a lot of things. There were just things, I would, try to watch or try to read, and I'm just like, oh, I would just see it. Hi, Cleo. Hi, I'm fine. I know. I sound upset. I'm good. And it just, I just saw it completely differently. And I had to like take a moment and remember that while, yes, it is, there, you just see stuff online on social media where it's like, oh, was so-and-so trying to tell us something with this or that, and you will drive yourself crazy. I was driving myself crazy. There were things I was like, I can never read this again. I just, I need my fainting couch. Where am I smelling salt? This is just, oh my God, it's just, and no. We have to remember that there have been, since time immemorial, like, these storytelling tropes. And there are just going to be things that are just going to resonate in a particular way today. And that's not to say that Chris Claremont was trying to tell us something, or, the never-ending story. There were just so many things where I was just like, and no, it's just, these are storytelling tropes. These are, things. There's nothing new under the sun. Everything is different. Everything's the same. History repeats itself. I don't know. I'm trying to like look at it from an angle where I'm not going to drive myself crazy and I can still enjoy things. And also there's another side to it, like when you, cause things are bleak. Things are really dark out there right now. And you just have to remember, like, there are things, you got to remind yourself, like, I think about, like Alien or The Neverending Story or Terminator, like Sarah Connor was just a waitress living with a roommate, like, and then she turns out to be the mother of the future, and Bastion was literally getting thrown away in a dumpster by bullies like a piece of trash, and then he ends up saving Fantasia. And Atreyu, he gets laughed off, like, at his introduction to saving, the childlike empress. They straight up say to him, they were like, we don't want Atreyu the child, where's Atreyu the warrior? And he's like, I am the only Atreyu of my people, like, hello. So in Ripley, she's just, this chick toting cargo through space. Like, these people, they weren't like great heroes. They were literally nobodies, and they saved Fantasia. So just keep that in mind next time you're feeling really crappy about things. It just takes, a little bit of hope and a little bit of faith and a little bit of courage, and we will make it through. We will make it through. And even if we don't, regardless of it all, everything comes to an end. That is the one thing everything in all of existence shares. Since the beginning of time until the end of time, we have all come into existence. Everything has come into existence, and it all eventually comes to an end. So in the meantime, we will enjoy the things and pet the kitties and read the books and enjoy the art and listen to the music and touch the grass and feel the sun and breathe the air while we still can, right? Because we're here to live. We're here to live, or we're here to die. And we're gonna die, so let's live. And yeah, was Vonnegut trying to tell us something? Yes, he was trying to tell us something. He was trying to tell us a lot of things. And how we choose to take what he was telling us, it's up to us. And You know, it's a tragic comedy. Things are sad, but it's funny. Sad but funny. So, okay. I guess I'll end it here. Thank you for hanging out, and I'll see you soon. Good night.